Okay, for this next one, you're actually going to be starting a new page. So obviously you know that new is always under the File menu, but if you've got the Welcome screen open, it's right here as well. Top center column, Create New HTML. And here you get a blank page, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it in split view, but I'm going to reduce my split view. Actually, you know what? Go ahead and start off in design view. Okay. So there's a couple of ways that we can lay out parts of our page. And one of them is by using a table. And if you look up here under your Common tab, you can see a table right here. Okay? If you click on it, you get a pop-up. It asks you about how many rows, columns, size, thickness of the border, padding, spacing, etc. What we're going to do with this table is we're actually going to go ahead and you're going to put in your class schedule for the day. Okay? So we know we have 7 classes, right? So we're going to go ahead and put in 7 rows. Now, columns is what goes up and down. That's a column. Rows go left to right. And so we know that we want one row to be numbers. We want a second row to be the class name. And we'll do a third row to do room numbers. No, not room numbers, teacher name. Okay? So we'll have that brings us to 4 columns. Now, the table width. There's 2 ways that you can determine table width. You can do it as a percentage of the page or by pixels. If you do it by pixels, it's exact. If you do it by percent, it changes based on how big a screen you have, how big your browser is set on your screen, whether you've got it filling half your page or your full page. So typically we like to do a set with pixels. And I'm going to go ahead and make this, I think I'm going to do 600 pixels. And I'm going to set my border thickness at 2 for right now. Now I'm going to leave the padding and the self-spacing blank because I'm going to adjust it with my properties panel later so that you can see the difference. So go ahead and click OK. And here is your table. So whenever you start typing in a table, you always start in the top left corner. So if we know we're starting with first period, I'm going to type the number 1. And I hit tab on my keyboard and it takes me from left to right across the first row. And then here I would type my class name. Now, my class name, unless you're my first period class, is going to be different than what I'm doing, but I'm going to put Intro to DDMP. You put your first period class. In the third row, I'm going to put my teacher name. Well, I'm the teacher, so I'm going to put that. And I made 4 rows because I can't count. I'm going to go ahead and use the 4th row and put in your room number. If you don't know what room number you're in, make it up. Okay? So, second period, I also have Intro to DDMP. And I also am teaching it. And I'm still in B201. Okay? You guys have something different, so type it in. And I'm going to go ahead and press pause while I finish filling out my table. Remember, if you use the tab key, you don't have to take your fingers off the keyboard to move it. You just tab from one cell to the other and it takes you all the way through. Press pause on your video so you can fill in the rest of your schedule and then press play again when you're ready to move on. Okay, so these are all the classes that I have during the day. You can see my 7 periods filled up there. Now, one thing that you maybe noticed as you typed it is that while you type it, the columns readjust their width based on the width of the information that you're putting in it. So you can see that this first cell really reduced itself pretty small. The next 2 are bigger because they have more text, and then the last one is small as well. Now, what I'd like to do first is we want to select this table. And if you click inside any one of the cells, come down here to your tag selectors and you can see the word table. That selects the entire table, and that's the easiest way to do it. If you look at your split view now, notice all of the code that was written in order to make that table. Okay, it's a lot of repetition there. All right, now with it selected, notice down here that we have cell padding and cell spacing. There's a difference between the two. I'm going to actually look at cell padding first, and I want you to notice how close all of the letters and text is to the cell wall. Now, if I make the cell padding 5 and hit return, notice how there's a little bit more space. What that does is it puts 5 pixels of space between the contents and the cell wall, and it puts it on every side. Okay? Now, look at the borders here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit for you. Okay, so right here, this is cell spacing, the spacing that is between each cell. So if the default is what you see. If I change cell spacing to 0 and hit return, notice how it's now a solid colored line. Okay, so it looks quite a bit different. Now, let's say, for instance, I look at this and I go, oh man, I forgot something. Well, if I wanted to put in column headings up here, I could insert another row at the top. So I'm going to put my cursor anywhere in this top row is fine, and I'm going to hit Control, click, and notice that table is the first thing on this pop-up menu. And I'm going to choose to do insert row columns. Notice there's 3 here. If I choose this one, it allows me to add more than one at a time, and it allows me to choose whether it goes above or below. So I'm going to choose that. And I actually am going to do 2 rows above the selection. That means it's going to go to the top of the table. And I'm going to click it. OK. All right, so here I have period, and I'll just do PD, course, teacher, and room. Okay. Now, up here, what I would like is I would actually like to have something that says my schedule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag so that I select every cell in that row. And if you look down here at the tag selectors, you see the TR selected. That shows you the whole thing is selected. Now, if I go almost straight down, notice that I've got 2 little buttons here. The one on the left will merge all the selected cells, meaning that it combines it into one. So I'm going to click that. The one next to that would split cells. So if I needed to split it into whatever, I could. I'm not going to. I was just showing you that I could. So now this is one cell that goes the entire width of the table, and I can say my schedule. Now, because this is a heading, I might want to make this like a heading 2. Okay. Now, this cell right here, up at the very top, if you look down here in the properties, you'll notice that there is something here that says header. If you check it, it makes it a header cell. Header cells are automatically bolded and centered. I'm going to do that with the next row too. I'm going to select that. I'm going to make all of those header cells. Now, you might see the width and the height down here. Let's say, for example, I wanted this row, or sorry, this column to be, I don't know, let's say 10%. I'm not sure if that's the right number, but let's say 10%. That's going to make it a little bit bigger. And then if this one here, we can say 15%. Ooh, that made it a little bit smaller. That leaves me with 75% left. So if I highlight both of those, if I want to make them equal, 75 divided by 2 is basically 37, so I could make each one of them 37%. And now those two middle columns are equal sized. Okay, and so that's how you do that. Now, you may have noticed that when I click in a cell that I have this BG right here. That's BG stands for background color. So I could give my cell or parts of my cell a background color. And maybe this one has something, I don't know, a little bit darker. I could do something for the rest of it if I wanted, but I'm not. If I select my table, notice down here that I could change the border of it if I wanted to. I can also align that to the center of my page using this align. This is different. This is not the same as aligning to text. This is aligning the whole thing. Okay. Now, let's say, for instance, that I want to make this border color. Let me see. I'm going to test out a color here. That one's a little bit more yellow. Actually, let me do that one. Okay, so this is a hexadecimal code. I'm going to cut that. Okay, so it's going to be back at white. If I go here to split view and select my table, I can come up here and notice that I have in my table tag, I also have these attributes: width, border, align center, cell padding, cell spacing. Well, one of my attributes that I can do is border color. Look at that right there. Border color equals, whenever you put in a hexadecimal, you start with the pound sign or hashtag, and then you put in a number. And now look, I have that color that I put down at the bottom. That is the color of my border. Now, let's go ahead and save this. And we can go to a few ways to do it. File, save. You can do the keyboard shortcut Command S. See this up here? You can also Control, maybe Command. Nope, neither. I lied. All right, so I'm going to do Command S. I guess maybe it's only when you have multiple ones out. We're going to go ahead and call this index. And if you remember setting the preferences in the earlier challenge, we set them to .htm, and so it automatically put that extension on it for us. Hit save, and notice that it's right down here. And you can close this video and move on to the next